The morning sunlight of Los Angeles reflected through the giant glass walls of the 42nd floor conference room inside the Thompson estate. A long walnut table, more than 20 feet, was covered with documents, contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars for a Japanese car battery supply project. The air was elegant, but tense enough that you could hear the clock ticking. Ricardo Montero, the vice president with a cold smile and mocking eyes, threw a look toward the woman standing by the wall, Carmen, the Thompson family's black housekeeper. He sneered, "If she translates, I will give her mother my job." The room burst into laughter. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut like a knife. Isabel, William Thompson's daughter, snorted, trying to hide a mocking grin. On Carmen's face, there was a flicker of silence. Her hand tightened around the coffee tray, but her eyes remained lowered. At the head of the table, Mr. Takashi Sato, the CEO of a Japanese auto parts corporation, looked around, clearly annoyed and disappointed. He said something in Japanese, fast and urgent. No one understood. The interpreter they hired had not arrived yet. William Thompson, the chairman, tried to smooth things over with a few awkward words in English. But Mr. Sato's eyes had already gone cold. The atmosphere shattered under the weight of embarrassment. A $200 million deal was now on the verge of collapsing, all because of arrogance and a joke in bad taste. Out in the hallway, 22-year-old Leticia Silva stood still. She had heard everything. Her face calm, but her eyes burned with something fierce, unspoken. The camera cuts between Ricardo's smug grin and Leticia's determined stare. Voiceover, hook. One insult, one reckless bet. No one knew that in the next 5 minutes, it would change the fate of an entire company. The clock kept ticking. Mr. Sato spoke slowly. 5 minutes. If no one translates, we walk away. That sentence, like a blade, and Leticia began to move. Carmen Silva had worked for the Thompson family for 7 years. Every morning, she was the first to step into that mansion of over 10,000 square feet, her rough hands polishing every bit of dust as if it were her own floor. Her uniform was simple, her shoes worn down, and her smile gentle as she placed a cup of coffee exactly where Mr. William liked it. She existed in that house every day, yet no one ever really saw her. Once, Isabel, William's daughter, deliberately spilled a glass of orange juice, watched Carmen clean it up, then said coldly, "Do not make that face. It is your job." Carmen simply bowed her head without saying a word. But in her eyes, something both broke and burned quietly. Leticia Silva, 22 years old, Carmen's only daughter, was the flame born from those silent moments. She was in her final year at UCLA, majoring in international relations with a focus on Asian markets. She studied by day and worked the night shift at a bakery to pay her tuition. At 4 in the morning, while the city still slept, Leticia sat in their small kitchen under a soft yellow light, studying kanji. For 3 years, she taught herself Japanese, not just the language, but the culture, the art of negotiation, and the precise angle of a bow when apologizing. She began learning Japanese the day she overheard Ricardo's words in the company hallway. "These people do not make an effort." To her, that sentence was not only an insult to Asians, it was a blade cutting through everyone ever looked down on because of their skin color or where they came from. Meanwhile, Ricardo Montero, the vice president of Thompson Enterprises, saw himself as the face of American success. He walked with that arrogant laugh that turned everyone around him into props in his power show. To him, Carmen was just the maid, and Leticia, if he ever heard of her, was merely the maid's kid. William Thompson, the man at the top, was not cruel, but blinded by profit. All he cared about was whether the $200 million deal with Takashi Sato would be signed or not. The humiliation that happened in that meeting room, to him, was just a minor communication mistake. Takashi Sato, the Japanese CEO, was born into a family of mechanics in Yokohama. He once said, "Respect does not come from status. It comes from how you treat those below you." That was why, when he saw Carmen being mocked, his eyes darkened. In Japanese culture, Disrespect cannot be forgiven, and he was willing to walk away from that deal just to keep his honor. In a world where prejudice seeps into every glance, sometimes it only takes one person brave enough to step forward to prove that worth is not in skin color, but in preparation and persistence. While the meeting room on the 42nd floor was breaking under silence, out in the hallway, Leticia looked at her phone, scanning through the contract displayed on the screen. She had secretly taken photos of a few pages when an assistant accidentally left the printed copy open on the photocopy table. Rows of dense technical terms, tables converting kilowatt hours to kilowatts, and yen to dollar price lists, the kind that made others dizzy, to her. It was a familiar language. For 3 years, Leticia had not just studied Japanese. She learned keigo, the formal and respectful speech Japanese businessmen use. She studied nemawashi, the art of preparing for consensus before negotiations. And in her long nights at UCLA, she researched the electric vehicle battery supply chain, lithium components, conversion factors, and the energy loss ratio between modules and cells. Her final year project was an application, a Japanese-American negotiation toolkit. It analyzed technical terminology, suggested culturally appropriate expressions, and automatically detected unit conversion errors in contracts. She called it Bridge App, the bridge between two worlds. The ticking clock in the meeting room grew louder. Mr. Sato glanced at his watch. 4 minutes left. Ricardo crossed his arms, his mocking smile unchanged. Leticia took a deep breath and stepped forward. The door of the meeting room opened, a collision between the world of power and the world forgotten. She spoke clearly. "I am Leticia Silva, UCLA International Consulting. I can help with your language issue." A heavy silence fell. Ricardo burst out laughing. The maid's daughter, playing consultant now. A few others chuckled, but their laughter quickly died when Leticia bowed slightly, then spoke in fluent Japanese. "Sato-sama, teihin moshiwaki gozaimasen, kana fukaku na shichiri wo okashimashita." Please forgive the disrespect that has occurred. The air in the room changed. Mr. Sato tilted his head slightly, his tense eyes now filled with curiosity. Leticia continued, pointing at the contract page on her phone. "Here, page 18, the conversion from kilowatt hours to kilowatts is miscalculated. It affects the module efficiency by 2.7%. A minute of silence. Mr. Sato bent down to check. Then he nodded slowly. One single nod, and the whole room froze. Carmen, standing in the corner, held her breath. Her eyes were wet. Ricardo stammered something, but William Thompson said nothing, his eyes caught between surprise and shame. Sometimes, people think you have no voice until you become the very language they're forced to listen to. The air inside the conference room had grown thick and heavy. From the head of the table, Mr. Takashi Sato looked straight at William Thompson, then spoke slowly in English. "If no one shows real competence within 5 minutes, we withdraw." The clock ticked forward another notch. Sweat started to bead on Ricardo's forehead. He forced a nervous laugh and turned to William. "Sir, this is ridiculous. We can fix this later." But Leticia cut him off. She mirrored her phone screen onto the conference television, the contract file highlighted in red. "Here, the conversion from yen to dollar is wrong. It is overcharging the Japanese partner by 2.3%. That is millions of dollars." Every pair of eyes turned to her. Her voice was steady, firm. "This is not just a translation mistake. It is negligence." Mr. Sato leaned over and signaled for his assistant to verify. Within seconds, the assistant nodded. Confirmation. The room exploded in tension. Ricardo's face turned red as he tried to regain control. "She is making it up. You cannot just let some random girl hijack our meeting." Leticia said nothing. She tapped her phone, and a recording played. "If she translates, I'll give her mother my job." The words echoed through the sealed conference room, clear, cold, and cruel, Ricardo's own voice. No one laughed anymore. Carmen bowed her head, tears falling on her cracked hands. William looked up, both stunned and furious. Ricardo jumped to his feet. "That is a private recording. You cannot use that." But Mr. Sato placed his hand on the table, his voice low and controlled. "In our culture, respect is not private, it is everything." The room fell silent again. He turned toward William. "We need partners who respect people and understand details. She does both." He pointed at Leticia. "Let her continue." Leticia took a deep breath and opened the next slide, a clear comparison between two technical tables. Specification mismatches and cost deviation charts. Her tone was calm, professional, every word slicing through Ricardo's arrogance. 4.5 minutes. William glanced at the clock, then at Leticia. If he did not act now, the $200 million contract would vanish. Leticia said firmly, "Give me permission to fix this contract. I will correct every unit and apply my negotiation tool. We can save the deal today." A moment of silence. Then Mr. Sato nodded. "Let's proceed with Miss Silva." 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes, for a girl once looked down upon to turn humiliation into the tool that saved an entire company. The clock hit exactly 5 o'clock. Ricardo stood frozen. William gave a decisive nod. Carmen stood trembling, tears glimmering in her eyes, as if witnessing something she had never dared to believe could happen. The 42nd floor conference room was now filled with heavy silence. On the large screen, the new contract appeared, spotless, precise, every number aligned perfectly. Mr. Takashi Sato nodded in satisfaction, his eyes gleaming with respect. "Thompson Enterprises can now proceed," he said, turning to William. "But only under one condition. Miss Silva continues as our official liaison." Ricardo stood frozen. His face went pale, unable to comprehend what had just happened. He had lost his credibility and his power, all because of one careless, arrogant sentence. William Thompson took a deep breath. He looked at Leticia, then at Carmen standing behind her. He understood. Between protecting the pride of a vain vice president and securing a $200 million deal, there was only one choice. "Ricardo," he said quietly, but with icy firmness, "hand over your office keys. You are relieved of duty." The entire room went silent. Ricardo opened his mouth to protest, but William did not even glance at him. An assistant stepped forward and took the keys. The symbol of power, now just the sound of cold metal falling onto a wooden table. Leticia turned to Mr. Sato and bowed. "Thank you for giving us a second chance." Mr. Sato smiled and replied in Japanese, "You earned it." William stepped forward, his tone heavy but resolute. "Miss Silva, about that bet," Ricardo said. "If you translated, your mother would take his job." He paused. "So, I suppose the position is yours." The room gasped. Carmen shook her head, crying softly. "I do not belong there," she whispered. Leticia smiled gently. "Then I will take it, not for revenge, but for progress." She was officially appointed as representative and interim vice president of international automotive partnerships. Carmen took the position of quality supervisor, with a salary 3 times higher than before. The signing ceremony resumed. Mr. Sato signed the renewed contract, along with the cooperation agreement to use Letitia's Bridge app. William publicly introduced her to the entire board. Mr. Sato shook her hand and said clearly, "This app could change how Japan and America talk to each other." Ricardo stood by the doorway, watching silently. The recording of his own words played once more, this time during the internal press conference. As a lesson that needed no caption, William concluded, "We cannot tolerate behavior that risks our partnerships or our humanity." Carmen embraced her daughter through tears. Leticia looked straight into the company's internal camera and said firmly, "For me, this is just the beginning." Ricardo turned away. The lights reflected off his empty expression. The door closed behind him, softly, like a final period. Justice is not revenge, it is the moment when the underestimated stand tall. And the world has no choice but to bow in recognition. 6 months later, The city of Los Angeles glowed under the sunset, reflected across the glass towers. On the 20th floor of Thompson Enterprises headquarters, Leticia Silva walked into her new office. On the glass door, a small plaque read, Vice President, International Automotive Partnerships. She spoke fluent Japanese during a video meeting with Tokyo. On screen, Mr. Sato smiled and nodded, the respect now born not from sympathy, but from competence. Meanwhile, at the production plant, Carmen Silva wore her supervisor's jacket with a radiant smile. The same employees who once passed by her without a greeting now bowed respectfully. She guided new workers, inspecting the quality of each battery module. On her desk sat a small bouquet and a handwritten card. Thank you for raising a bridge. Leticia's Bridge app had been licensed by more than 10 international automobile companies, generating several $1 million a year. But instead of buying a new car or a luxury apartment, she devoted most of the profits to opening a free language and career center for underprivileged youth. On the wall of the center was a hand-painted quote, "Competence has no color, only results." Black, Asian, and Latin students sat side by side, studying Japanese and business English. Carmen often volunteered to teach the first class of the week, still with that gentle smile from years ago. Only now, everyone called her Supervisor Silva. As for Ricardo Montero, once a symbol of power, he now walked through small offices, resume in hand. Everywhere he went, people had already heard about the recording. One afternoon, he sent Leticia a message. "I was wrong, I am sorry." She replied simply, "Second chances are earned, not given. No bitterness, just peace." The world does not change because powerful people degrade things. It changes because ordinary people dare to rise at the right moment. Leticia stood on the balcony of the 20th floor, her hair dancing in the wind. Behind her, the city of Los Angeles blazed with light. Her voice echoed, "The best revenge is building something greater." If this story makes you believe that effort can shatter prejudice, hit subscribe. Share a moment when you were underestimated and how you overcame it. Leave a comment below. And if you believe in the power of education, support free learning centers like the one Leticia built.